Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay.
You didn't have to ask.
So this is the right front disc brake on a Toyota Sienna minivan, a 2004 model. And the brake pads are very thin, and the brakes are making some noise and not acting properly. So what I'm doing right now is I'm removing a bolt on the back side of the caliper that will allow it to swing out of the way so that I can remove the brake pads and replace them with new ones. You can also leave one of the bolts in and just swing the caliper upward, but I find it easier to do it this way. So this comes off, and there's enough brake hose here that it just flexes out of the way. So these are the old brake pads, and the other side of the van was actually lower, the left front. Actually had less material, but these are definitely very low and need to be replaced, especially when you compare it to the new one. You can see the difference in thickness. So I'm going to pull these shims off the back of the brake pads because they are necessary for brakes to be quiet and whatnot. And they basically snap on the back. That brake dust you really don't want to inhale, but there isn't asbestos in brake products like there used to be. This slides in here, and this one slides on the back side. I use Napa brake parts on this van. We used to take it to the Toyota dealership, and the brakes that they put on there would only last about 18,000 miles. And every time we took it in there, they would also charge us to machine the rotors, and the rotors got so thin because of this machining that they wanted us to replace those. So we just put on Napa brake parts, and they last much, much longer. 40 to 60,000 miles, it's much more. And what I'm doing right now is I'm squeezing this slip joint plier, and what it does is it retracts the piston. Now if you wanted to be safe, you would actually put one of these old brake pads in between this to protect the piston. Sometimes they can be very delicate. So now because of this, there's clearance for this caliper to fit over these new brake pads. Otherwise you would never be able to get it on. So these bolts that I'm putting in here hold down the caliper, and they really don't need a lot of torque on them. There's not very much force against them. If you take this wrench, which is actually longer than I need, you can apply too much torque. There's actually a torque wrench that would make sure that you put the proper amount of torque to this bolt. Not too tight, not too loose, but I don't have a torque wrench, so I'm going to do it by hand, and I haven't had any problems with them coming loose. I'm not even in the ideal position to put a lot of torque on these bolts because I don't really need to. I can just do it from here like this, and they're plenty tight. I'm going to slide this out of the way. I'm going to grab these 5 nuts that go onto the wheel studs, pull the wheel on. I'm going to upright the wheel and tire, roll it over, and next I just have to align it with some of the bolts here. And next I'm going to put these nuts on by hand, which ensures that they're threading properly. Now I'm going in a pattern where I always go to the nut on the opposite side, and that's the way you're intended to tighten these nuts down. And if you apply too much torque to these, you can also break off a wheel stud, and those can be a pain to replace, so you definitely don't want to do that. On some German vehicles such as Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audi as well, they use wheel bolts instead of these studs, and they're actually bolts that stick in through here and go into the hub assembly through the rotor. And that's just a different design, and Japanese and domestic vehicles usually don't use that design. I've never seen it. Even on a smart car, which only has 3 bolts holding on the wheels, they use wheel bolts instead of studs, because those vehicles are made by Mercedes-Benz. Now for this point, I'm going to take off the gloves. I'm going to go around to the driver's seat. Over here? Or else you can look through this. I guess over here is better. This is an important part to remember. Because the pistons are retracted right now, the brake pedal will actually go pretty low. So I'm going to start it up. And now this brake pedal, as I put my foot on it, watch, it goes very low, very easily. I don't even have to press very hard. If I was to put the vehicle in gear right now, it would move and I wouldn't be able to stop very quickly. So I'm going to pump the pedal until it gets hard and firm, because the brakes are only designed to move that piston a little bit each time you press the brake. So that piston's coming out, and it's going to find the spot where that is firm. And you see I put it in reverse, and it holds the vehicle in place. Alright, you can hit the button that concludes.
How do you do this one?
What were you holding your finger in front of?